Good afternoon and welcome to the latest edition of the LTC webinar series. My name is Brian Bates. I'm the Director of Professional Learning with the LTC, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Matt Jacobson. Before I kick it over to Matt, just a couple of reminders before we get started. First, we are recording the webinar and it'll be available for you to watch later on or share with a colleague later this afternoon at our website. They're listed on the screen, ltcillinois.org/events/webinars. Scroll down to the on-demand section and you'll find that a little bit later on today. To receive professional development credit for attending live today, you'll receive an email in your inbox tomorrow. Once you fill out that evaluation, you'll receive your PD credit for attending today's session. If you have any questions for Matt, please feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll keep an eye on those and we'll make sure we get those answered before the end of the session today. Without any further ado, Matt, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take over.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. Can you let me share my screen there, buddy, and we'll move forward.
I suppose I can.
That'd be nice.
All right, give it a shot now.
There we go. Okay, now we're set. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what might be considered by many as a sort of a new direction for professional learning, and that's the idea of microcredentials. Today, we'll start with sort of a working definition of microcredentials, and we'll talk about the benefits that they can offer. We'll look at some different providers of microcredentials for professional learning, as well as maybe some ways we could use this concept with students. At the end, before we take Q&A, we'll spend some time talking about the LTC's first microcredential pilot that will be starting up in a couple of weeks. My name is Matt Jacobson, and I am the online learning specialist for the Learning Technology Center of Illinois. I've been doing this job for about a little over a year and a half now. And what I do is help facilitate the online courses and other online learning activities like microcredentials for teachers throughout the state of Illinois. Prior to this, I was a technology curriculum and professional development coordinator for LUDA School. I've also been a consultant, and I started my career spending about 13, 14 years in middle schools teaching 7th grade social studies and science. And I'm also a caregiver to my parents, manager of our family farm, and a dyed-in-the-wool Star Wars nerd. So if you want to talk about any of these ideas that I've just mentioned, feel free to reach out to me at my email address, or you can find me at YodaMatt68 on Twitter. So let's start with microcredentials. Everyone is familiar with the old model of professional development, which is the sit and get model. I'm going to come into a room, I'm going to sit down and passively absorb some new idea. And when it's done, I will walk away feeling fully professionally developed. And we all know that rarely equates into change in a classroom. In my previous role as professional development coordinator, I received feedback on one of those evaluation forms that said, you know what, Matt, this is all good idea. This is a good idea, good information to have, but after we go back to our classrooms and close the door, there's nothing that you can do to make me implement this. And that was eye-opening to me. They're absolutely correct. That old model of professional development, it's very difficult to connect that to really effective classroom change. Microcredentials can go a step further. Microcredentials usually require some sort of demonstration of, skills, actions, behaviors to show your mastery. Um, Microcredentials are usually focused on how to best apply the latest research to a classroom learning environment. They are job embedded and relate directly to what we do in a classroom. As I mentioned previously, they usually focus on certain discrete skills that can be demonstrated and observed. Um, we will see the participant applying what they've learned to a classroom in some manner. Um, Microcredentials support educator agency. It lets the educator choose the path and the time in which they pursue the information. It can be synchronous, it can be asynchronous, or a mixture of both. Microcredentials are not courses. Courses usually involve considerably more time on task to complete, and they are very participatory. They're not passive, as it says there on screen. We start by listening and knowing, then we discuss and we collaborate and apply. And when we have the opportunity to demonstrate, that's where we really change the game. And that link, you can grab that link at bit.ly/micro, to read an article from EdSurge on microcredentials, sort of the pros and cons of microcredentials and how they can be used. Again, we're all used to receiving professional development, but microcredentials are very, very different. Microcredentials are earned through active participation and through application in the learning environment. Let's see, I see we have some messages in the chat here, huh? Oh, thanks, Brian. Might want to put an http:// before that so that folks can just click and go forward with that. Microcredentials are sometimes arranged in stacks. So you might have several smaller learning activities that would create a stack. There you go, Brian, thank you. That would create a stack of microcredentials. So if you think of a more complex concept, theory, there are theories, there are tools, you would discuss and create and practice. Then a new theory or tool, discuss, create, practice. And when you demonstrate how they all work together, you've earned a microcredential. And sometimes, as it says there on screen, sometimes badges can be used as a visual artifact or a recognition of mastery of those various skills. You're probably familiar with getting a driver's license. Microcredentials are kind of like that. You learn how to operate the vehicle. You learn how to make it go. More importantly, you learn how to make it stop. You learn how to operate it safely. You learn about some laws. You do both a written exam and you do a behind the wheel demonstration with an instructor. And then you get a visual representation, that license in your hand, that shows that you have all the skills needed to complete, to operate a motor vehicle safely. Many of us are familiar with scouting. myself included. Way back in the day, I was a Cub Scout. And Cub Scouts have this nifty matrix that you need to complete in order to achieve different levels. They happen to call their levels different badges. So in the case of Cub Scouts, you start out as a lion. You need to complete, on the left side there, you need to complete 5 required courses in order to become a Tiger Scout. And then you need to complete 6 required courses or plus an elective in order to get to the next level, and so forth. So here are some of the Lion adventures. They call them adventures rather than micro-credentials. You need to complete each one of these and an elective in order to move to the next level. And the Tigers are similar way. Here are requirements and here are different electives. So there are some required items, some required knowledge and skills, and there are things that allow the scout some agency, some choice to learn about things they want to learn about. Let's take another quick look at an educator micro-credential from the Friday Institute at North Carolina State. NC State, the Friday Institute, has been working with an organization called Digital Promise for quite a while in the development and dissemination of micro-credentials. Here's one on learning differences. Now, in this case, how about if I go to the website and show you the whole site? This sort of demonstrates that stack. Here is the overview of the whole micro-credential stack, and it is made up of 6 different, 2, 4, 6, yep, 6 different micro-credentials, each one signified by the badge you see on the left. They can take a different amount of time for different sets of knowledge and skills. And when you complete one of these, in some cases, you're submitting a written product. In some cases, you're submitting a project. Other micro-credential platforms may have you submit a video as evidence, those kinds of things, so that they can see that you've done more than just sit and read a website or watched a few videos in order to award, or in order, I should say, to earn that micro-credential. Micro-credentials have been around for a long time. Those of us in the tech field know that there are lots of different certifications, whether you're Microsoft, Apple, or Google. There are lots of different certifications that tech directors and so forth can get. Micro-credentials are a little bit like that. Digital Promise published a policy report a few years ago. There were a handful of states that were starting to work toward micro-credential programs or were already implementing. And on this slide, I've linked to some of those state departments of education that are using micro-credentialing for as either alternative or primary paths for educators to pursue their professional learning and keep their licensure or teaching credentials up to date. Now, Illinois is started down this road through partners. And in 2017, the progress report on the Comprehensive Strategic Plan for Elementary and Secondary Education from ISB states, and I will quote, ISB hopes to spur a similar shift in educators' learning from sit and get professional development to teacher-led micro-credentials. ISB is collaborating with states that are pioneering microcredentials in the hopes of designing and launching a microcredentialing pilot in the future. The Illinois Principals Association, I'll click over to that, has a number of microcredentials available now, primarily for principals, superintendents, and teachers interested in moving in that direction, that they can pursue on their website. And as you can see, they have plans to build out these microcredential offerings considerably in the future. Some other organizations that are offering microcredentials for educators really include Digital Promise, Bloom Board, and a number of other different organizations. I mentioned the Friday Institute. Phi Delta Kappa International is working with microcredentials. A number of educators may be familiar with the NEA's offerings of microcredentials. And those of us in the tech field, we certainly are familiar with becoming Apple certified, Google certified, or Microsoft innovators in education. Those are not technically microcredentials. They call them certifications in many respects, but the idea of those certifications and the ideas of microcredentials are rather similar. You can download a white paper from the Christensen Institute there for more information on really a higher level view of how microcredentials are being used in education and also in other workplaces. Badges, as I mentioned before, badges are often thought of as in synonymous terms of microcredentials. So I'd like you to think of microcredentials as the learning and demonstration of knowledge, and badges are the visual representation of your achievement in mastering those concepts and skills. Kids love badging programs. And if your school is using a full-on learning management system like Canvas, Edmodo, I'm not sure Schoology offers something like that, but those bigger names in learning management systems may already have, if not a badging system built into it, they may be able to provide some sort of access, either paid or free, to a badging platform. Some of the badging platforms you can find out on the interwebs today. Open Badges Initiative has been around for a few years as sort of a clearinghouse and a central location where people can submit their badge ideas and have one single local place to go, so that you can communicate clearly what the badge means in terms of knowledge and skills. Credly and Badger are similar platforms. I know Credly and Badger are both used inside Canvas. There's probably a fee involved with those, but they're very good platforms. Alice Keeler, some of you may know from her writings. She's also very prolific on social media with her support of educators. She has an idea on how to create your own badges and distribute them through a Google Sheet. And she provides the Google Sheet to educators for free. You can make your own copy, modify the badges on the right here to fit your needs, and you can change the badge descriptions and so forth as needed. She goes through and goes into great detail on how to create badges by simply using Google Drawings. You could also find some templates for badging if you are a Canva user, Canva. There are a number of tools and templates in Canva that will help you make badges. She offers some tips on how to set those up, how to publish them and distribute them out to educators and students as well. I've had some questions about the DIY model. One I get most often is, can I just send a picture to kids in email? And that's their badge. Okay, so can you and should you are two different questions. Can you? Yes, of course you can. Should you is the question. I would encourage you to avoid it. I would have a central location where your badges are all found, that, you know, maybe you unlock with an emailed password. Maybe it's a quiz in Google Forms, and when students complete the quiz correctly, the last page is a link to the badge in your Google Drive, and they can either make a copy or you know, insert that onto a spreadsheet or a document as part of their student portfolio or things like that. Once you email a badge image out, it is going to be out in the wild and you lose control over it. You want to have one place where your badges live, and each badge needs to have a description of the specific skills or competencies that have been displayed and what your benchmark, your criteria is for achieving those. And again, that spreadsheet idea that Alice Keeler uses can help with that. There are some other ideas. There's another idea from Alice Keeler, and that is, oh, the report is, I have too many windows open on my screen. The report there is from, I'm trying to think of where that's from. The journal, sorry. How to create a low-cost microcredential PD experience for teachers. So I'll encourage you to look into that a little more deeply. Some ideas that have been around for a while. I'll click over to this. Jeff Utrecht has, I'm probably mispronouncing that, sorry if I am. The Google Apps Ninja program has been around for a number of years. This is something that a tech teacher developed several years ago. You can tell it's built on the old Google Sites platform originally. But this example shows how kids can achieve different levels using the karate belt system to display their mastery. And you can see different students have achieved different levels through the white belt, gold belt, green belt, black belt series. There are links to the learning experiences that they can't get to that video. It must be a local video. Different apologies. There are links to introduction, different types of coursework associated with each level, and exactly what they need to do to create a document and to the tests they need to take in order to pass and earn each belt to change their standing. And then there's a full description of the program here as well. Okay. Another idea comes from Aurora, Colorado. They have their digital badge program for students, but they also, I really kind of like this one, they also have corresponding sites for teachers, family, and community. So all the stakeholders understand what the badges are about. And they even have different community organizations that sponsor the various, they call them summits. So rather than micro-credential stacks, they have journeys or adventures that lead to a summit, which is the terminal badge in each stack of micro-credentials. And at each level, there are different skills associated with that overarching skill. For example, collaboration, critical thinking, information literacy, invention, and self-direction. And I think you have to be within that organization to view those learning activities. But it's very interesting and well thought out concept. Classcraft, some of you may be familiar with. Classcraft has a wonderful blog post on how to create and use digital badges in your classroom. And again, that Alice Keeler has a lot of stuff out there for educators. For educators throughout the United States and elsewhere. Okay, brass tacks time. I've used about 30 minutes. So let's talk about the LTC's microcredential. We've all been engaged in remote learning for the past almost closing in on a year now. And frankly, remote learning is a skill that many of us have had to learn on the fly. Not many of us may have taken a course in how to conduct remote learning in our pre-service teaching or our college experience. So we would like to offer educators an opportunity to have their hard work over the last year recognized and awarded with a microcredential stack. So I've identified 7 elements of remote learning, from the basic understanding and teaching digital citizenship, all the way up to the importance of SEL, designing and managing remote learning experiences, working with students with special needs, and providing assessment and feedback. I've organized these into a stack that is aligned with ISTE standards and the Learning Forward standards for professional development. I also aligned them with the old 2013 professional teaching standards. They will require an roughly equal amount of synchronous and asynchronous time. So there might be some time on a Zoom call with me, and there might be an equal amount of time working on a project or creating a video or a lesson plan or something like that. We'll take a team approach, sort of a cohort, as we get started on this pilot. I will provide coaching and feedback at regular intervals, or really on demand during our pilot. And I'll ask you for feedback throughout the whole process. You'll receive, you'll have multiple opportunities to display your competencies. And what that means is basically if you submit something and I have a few questions, you can redesign or tweak it a little bit, resubmit with no penalties or anything in order to achieve that micro credential. Each one of those 7 will take roughly 6 hours to complete over 3 weeks. And again, that's about an hour synchronous and an hour asynchronous every week for 3 weeks, for whichever ones you choose to try. You are not limited to just one, and you don't have to do them all at once. I'll release these on sort of a rolling basis, starting February 1st with Understanding Remote Learning. And you can sign up for 2 or more if you'd like until we get to about 10 participants each during this pilot phase. And you'll earn at least 6 hours of PD credit minimum for each one of these 7 courses of study in this micro-credential stack. I have a simple Google form if you're interested. Oops. I had a simple Google form. Sorry about that. Put this in the chat for you. If you'd like to be a part of this, the link to the application form is in the chat. I'll contact you and discuss this at your convenience. There are a few unanswered questions. Again, right now, we are waiting for further guidance from ISB on how micro-credentials will be differentiated from standard professional development credits. If there is a distinction, we will update our PD credit offerings as instructed by ISBE if that changes. Like I said, if nothing else, that's an easy way to earn, well, it won't be technically easy, but it's an achievable way for you to display your skills and earn some PD credit in the process for all the hard work that you've done over the past year. And you'll also want to check with your local school and ROE policies. There are a lot of policy implications that micro-credentialing may have for state and local education agencies. So I included in the presentation a link to sort of an overview of policy considerations that are out there throughout the US right now. I've also included some resources for further reading if you'd like to dive into this a little more. And that's my time, folks. We have about 10 minutes or so left. Does anyone have any questions for me at this time?
Thanks, Matt. We'll just pause here just a little bit to see if any questions come through in the chat. If you do have questions, make sure that it says 2 panelists and attendees so everybody can see the questions that are asked.
And also, if you'd like a link or if you'd like to make your own copy of this presentation, just click on that link in the chat and you can download this. It'll have all my speaker notes in it, and all those links will be active for you to explore, along with links back to sources and so forth.
All right. Well, I think if we would have had a question, we'd have had it by now. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Matt, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your links and resources. And just make sure you keep an eye out for more on the micro-credentialing program, both the State Board of Education, as well as what we are able to help provide with the LTC. Make sure you reach out to Matt if you're interested in joining the pilot programs. And until next time, thank you all for joining. We'll see everyone again later.
Thanks.